It seems like everywhere you look that Ole Miss is being talked about as nationally elite.
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, I'm Steven Willis, a 10-year veteran member of the national media and a former Ole Miss staff member. Today we are talking about the new Realtree helmet release and how incredible it looks. It's just another example of how Lane Kiffin has elevated Ole Miss football to national prominence. Right now we're ranked as a top 5 team, and it feels like a national title could be right around the corner with the way this program is attacking everything. Kiffin has truly transformed how Ole Miss sees itself, and fan energy is absolutely through the roof. The Georgia Southern game, hard sellout. And speaking of which, David Schultz from Locked On Sunbelt joins today to do the Know Your Enemy segment. Also, for a second listen, check out Chris Gordy at Locked On SEC or even Corey Burton at Locked On Vandy to get other great perspectives on college football and the SEC. This is the Locked On Ole Miss podcast, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen every day, and a special hello to the insiders and everydayers who make the show what it is. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Visit FanDuel to get started. So Ole Miss released their new helmet from Realtree. Everybody knows the Realtree helmet. It was the white fishing camouflage helmet that they wore against Kentucky, and I think against maybe it was Texas A&M or something like that. Ole Miss wore that. It was a thing. The Realtree people put it together. It looked absolutely fantastic. Ole Miss got the uniform of the year because of that. So we have entered the 2.0 section of that right now. And Realtree has released their new helmet, a little bit darker version of that nautical camouflage to where it kind of has a navy feel to what is going on. Now, Ole Miss can wear this helmet. As you can see, there's the light blue in there, there's the navy blue, and there's the red, which means you can wear that helmet with literally every jersey that you have. Lane Kiffin has done a fantastic job of branding Ole Miss and getting them out of the funk. They want to make it to where it's okay to do fun stuff, paint the end zones, do things differently. If you can't do something, why can't you do it? And if the answer is not good, do it anyway. That is what Lane Kiffin has brought to Ole Miss, and that's one of the reasons that Ole Miss has been successful in this NIL era and everything else that is going on. The reason Ole Miss is a top 5 program right now and beating the brakes off of absolutely everybody everywhere is the work that Lane Kiffin does, similar to this Realtree helmet. This Realtree helmet is symbolic of everything that is going on with Ole Miss football, and all the success that Ole Miss is having is likely due to stuff like this, the transfer portal, NIL, all of that stuff. Lane Kiffin, he admits he doesn't think outside the box. He builds another box, and they figure out a way to get it done. If it works, they keep doing it. If it doesn't work, they throw it out. I completely agree with that philosophy, but this helmet is absolutely gorgeous, by the way. It's absolutely fantastic, and I do not think anybody in the country does uniforms like Ole Miss. Now, Oregon got famous for their weird uniform combinations and all of that. But this is what separates Ole Miss in this game. Ole Miss, every uniform combination that they wear has a tie to this school. They have not made up a color to go on and play. They're not like Florida inventing black jerseys to go have a blackout, or Mississippi State or MTSU or any of them. It's not somebody walking out there in a chrome jersey or a pink jersey or something like that. No, everything that Ole Miss wears has a direct tie to that school. And that is unbelievably cool because Ole Miss wears a different uniform for every single ball game. And now with the Realtree helmet that just got created, like I said, you can wear it with navy, you can wear it with powder, and you can wear it with red. You can get 3 more jersey combinations out of that. That helmet is absolutely gorgeous, and I'm interested to see exactly how Ole Miss is going to use it. It is going to debut against Oklahoma. So Oklahoma, you better bring your A jersey when you come down here. I know it's probably going to be the red helmet, white jersey, and white pants. I get that, but just know that on the other side is going to be straight fire coming at you. All right, so we're going to do our Know Your Enemy segment of the show. Let's go and do Thunderdome with David Schultz of Locked On Sunbelt. Here we go. We are in Thunderdome, just like we are every week. It's Thursday, Know Your Enemy segment, and this is a rare treat that we have. We have a Locked On Sunbelt host that is going to talk about a G5 program, because most of the time it's hard to find information about a G5 program. David Schultz, I think you're stationed somewhere in Louisiana, if I'm not mistaken, maybe Lafayette.
Formerly, I've now moved to Bourbon country. I'm now in Louisville, but still trying to stay close to the Sun Belt.
Okay. But you are the guy. You're the host of Locked On Sunbelt, and Ole Miss has Georgia Southern Saturday night on the SEC Network. The College Corner color for the fans to wear of the game is powder blue. It is the Armed Forces Appreciation game, all of that stuff. Now, David, we're going to learn a little bit about Georgia Southern. This is the Know Your Enemy segment, and we're just going to start off right off. How much of a chance does Georgia Southern even have in this ball game?
Well, I mean, Ole Miss is obviously, really good football team. Some of us did win money on them last week via FanDuel. But Georgia Southern has an offense, right? They kept it up with Boise State. They were winning that ball game 37-36 after being down a little bit. And then it fell apart. They were up one, and then thinking about 7 game minutes later, they were down 19, and it got away from them. They ended up actually losing to Boise State by 11. Two different things this year about Georgia Southern than in the past. First of all, they had a QB competition. And the last couple of seasons, that was not the case, where Clay Helton brought in senior transfers to only play 1 year. And the issue with those guys, and maybe Clay Helton's offense, is turnovers. They turn the ball over incessantly, throwing interception after interception. And for those of us who may have had a little money on Georgia Southern taking down Wisconsin last year in a game they should have, Davis Brin going all LeBron James. Not 1, not 2, not 3, but I believe 5 interceptions, or at least turnovers, that's for sure. And so this year, J.C. French, who's a little bit of a two-way player compared to the drop-back quarterbacks that they had before, brings a little bit more to the table. But he won a quarterback competition that Clay Helton hadn't had before. Also, they struggle defensively, and that forces the offense to have to put up the points and maybe causes some of those turnovers. But this year, preseason, they got a couple of guys, all Sun Belt, up on the defensive line, Isaac Walker and Justin Rhodes, and then Marquise Watson-Trent, who leads the team in tackles through 3 ball games. He's the middle linebacker, and he leads the team in tackles. He's also first team preseason All Sun Belt. So oddly enough, they had more preseason All Sun Belt defensively, which was a little bit surprised. So does Georgia Southern have a chance? Obviously, they're going to have to score a bunch of points, probably force some turnovers. They may cover. What's that line? That's a big line. Isn't it a big line?
Yeah, they almost is favored by, I think, 36.5 at the moment.
Yeah, that's Georgia Southern can score. So I'm certainly following Ole Miss's offense. You can tell me how good Ole Miss's defense is, but Georgia Southern can put up some points.
Number 1 in the country in scoring defense.
What's that?
They're number 1 in the country in scoring defense. They're giving up 3 a game.
Who have they played so far?
They've played Furman, Middle Tennessee, and Wake Forest.
Okay. So Wake is impressive enough, or at least Power 5. But okay, so they have a defense. But here's the thing. Georgia Southern can put up some points. I believe that's going to happen. I don't think they're going to be – if they're held to 3, you may make Ole Miss one of the favorites to win the national championship, because Georgia Southern can score. Are they going to score 40 against Ole Miss? Probably not, but they can put up some points.
Yeah, it's a situation. The way Ole Miss shut out Furman, they gave up 3 to Middle Tennessee, and they gave up 6 to Wake Forest in Winston-Salem this past weekend. I almost want Georgia Southern to score a touchdown, because it's kind of getting to that no-hitter point to where you're kind of trying to prevent people from getting into the end zones. I want that over before SEC play starts.
Well, here's the other thing you probably want. I'm going to guess, the first team defense hasn't played 45 minutes yet, because somewhere along the way, coming up against Texas or whomever's after this, they're going to have to play 60 minutes. And the defense probably hasn't played 45 minutes yet, if they've even played 35 minutes, playing more than one series coming out of halftime. So I think they'll be able to put up a couple of points, and it depends if Jaxson Dart turns it over or not if Georgia Southern's in this game, because they can score. It depends if their defense shows up and forces a little pressure on Jaxson Dart and can control the run a little bit.
All right, when we come back, we'll start talking a little bit and drilling down on that Georgia Southern offense. They can score a little bit. We'll talk about how it relates to the Ole Miss defense and all of that stuff. We'll talk about that right after this. You've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel. It's America's #1 sports book. Well, we have something a little bit different for you. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube or YouTube TV. That's right. You take get a YouTube TV base plan, and you'll be able to watch every regular season Saturday afternoon out of market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment. You can cancel at any time, by the way. You can bet on Ole Miss -36 against Georgia Southern, or their national championship odds that have gotten better at plus 1,200. That's about 12-1. Jaxson Dart is currently at about 6-1 to win the Heisman Trophy. Whatever is your flavor, you can get it right now today. So visit FanDuel.com and download America's #1 sportsbook. Hey, Ole Miss fans, have you heard about ROY? It stands for Return on You. It's a groundbreaking platform that lets you, the fans, get involved in NIL like never before by contributing directly to your favorite athletes. By supporting players directly, you can help shape rosters, retain talent, and keep your favorite athletes out of the transfer portal. As all you know, NIL has changed the game for athletes. Well, ROY is changing the NIL game for fans. With ROY, fans can directly support players. ROY gives you the power to back your favorite college athletes, letting you play a key role in shaping your team's future while helping athletes maximize their potential. Plus, when you contribute to a successful campaign, you get exclusive content like decision announcements, behind-the-scenes footage, personal reflections, and it's only available to those who support the athlete. So download ROY for iOS or Android and enter the referral code Locked On. That's 2 words, Locked On, to be automatically entered into a sweepstakes to win $5,000 cash. Visit joinroy.com for more details. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited. Get off the sidelines and into the NIL game with ROY. Support the players and change the game. Stop by College Corner in Oxford, Mississippi, just off of Sisk Avenue for all of your Ole Miss needs. The Georgia Southern game is this weekend, and it is a powder game. You need some gear to be ready for that? Head on over to the College Corner store or visit collegecornerstore.com to be ready for Saturday night's game. Now, let's go back to Thunderdome with David Schultz. All right, we are back in Thunderdome with David Schultz, the host of Locked On Sunbelt, and we are going to spend this segment talking about the Georgia Southern offense because Ole Miss's defensive line, they are #1 in the country in rush defense. They're giving up 33 yards a game. Basically, to this point, nobody has been able to run the ball. They've given up less than a yard per carry. And looking at Georgia Southern stats, their leading rusher has 91 yards through 3 games. So this feels like a very one-dimensional air raid type game that Georgia Southern is going to try and do, right?
It would appear that way. Jalen White does have the 97 yards. He does have 5 touchdowns. Should mention O.J. Arnold, though, with only 12 carries, 79 yards. He's averaging, almost, 6.5 yards a carry. And J.C. French is also running the ball a little bit. So they're always going to be pass heavy with Clay Helton compared to what it used to be. For those who don't know, Georgia Southern, the original Adrian Peterson actually played for the Georgia Southern Eagles when they were FCS and winning national championships, went on to play for the Chicago Bears compared to the Adrian Peterson who played for Oklahoma and played.
Didn't Matt Breida play there?
What's that?
Matt Breida, didn't he play there as well?
That I don't know.
I think.
I just remember a friend of mine back in the day as a Georgia Southern grad, and we would pay attention because Adrian Peterson was like leading the nation, setting all kinds of records, rushing the football.
Listen, since Irk Russell was the coach of Georgia Southern, I mean, they've had Paul Johnson. He cut his teeth there running his offense. Then Willie Fritz, who's famously at Houston now, ended up there as well. So Georgia Southern, going all the way back through their tradition has kind of been a cradle of coaches in college football.
But it's been a cradle of running the triple option or some form of that to control the offensive line, to control the time of possession. And Clay Helton has turned that on its head. Like they're setting, passing records and receiving records because there haven't been any, at Georgia Southern. 500 yards receiving would probably be a record before 2 seasons ago. So Clay Helton has brought in the pro style of offense to throw the ball. They have gone on the road and beaten Nebraska. They won a major ball game a couple of years ago, beating App State, which is their big rival compared to, playing Georgia Southern in a couple of weeks. So he's changed the way they do things down there. They just have to cut down on those. They have to cut down on the turnovers. And if the defense can step it up, it gives Georgia Southern a chance.
Okay, let's kind of break down by position, like Georgia Southern's offensive line against Ole Miss's defensive line. Any players on Georgia Southern's offensive line, is it problematic? I see 31 yards in losses for J.C. French, and the defensive line is probably the strength of Ole Miss's team, period.
That's going to be a problem. They're going to have to run the football, at least try to, or else Ole Miss's defensive line is going to tee off on J.C. French. So they have to try and run the football at least a little bit. And if they're not able to do so, it's going to be a long day for Georgia Southern. So it would be interesting. It would be interesting if they tried the opposite, right? Because sometimes you get the opposite when you throw the ball to try and eventually run the ball, right? Because most teams run the ball to try and pass the ball. Sometimes, though, you come out with a game plan to, you come out 4 or 5 wide and you're trying to run the ball from that, try a little bit of a different game plan. So we'll see how Clay Helton attacks it. But yeah, that's going to be a problem for Georgia Southern.
Yeah. And I'm curious of what's going to go on there. Now, if you look at Georgia Southern's wide receiver, they're obviously a pass happy team. They're throwing for about 250 yards per game. And J.C. French is the trigger man behind that. At wide receiver, what do they have? Who are the danger players?
Well, they got Dalen Cobb. He's got 15 catches, 175 yards. He's got a couple of touchdowns. They have thrown for 6 touchdowns in 3 ball games, but he's averaging almost 12 yards a carry or 12 yards a reception. And Derwin Burgess Jr., he's got 10 catches for 172 yards. So he's got 17.2 yards a catch. And then Josh Dallas only has 6 catches, but over 100 yards, and he's averaging 16 yards a catch. So almost 17 yards a catch. So they do have some deep threats. They will try to, use tempo, try to go up tempo. Not always. Sometimes, Steven, we see, it's not necessarily getting the playoff quickly. It's just getting to the line quickly to prevent substitutions. We'll see how Ole Miss wants to handle that with their defensive line, if they're going to get tired at all, because obviously usually teams like Ole Miss have a ton of depth and they want to get guys in and out and keep them fresh. So they may not necessarily snap it. I remember my guy, Tom Brady, they would play hurry up football, but he's snapping it with like 2 or 1 second left. It's not really hurry up football. So it'll be interesting to see how Clay Helton maybe, somewhere along the way goes in a hurry and snapping it within 15, 20 seconds of the ball being lined up, or waiting the whole play clock, and always getting the clap. That it's not just Clay Helton. It's everybody who annoys me when they clap, fake a clap and look to the sidelines. Just call the play. Just run the play. They lined up. What's coming. Just call the play. Just run it.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you there. And Ole Miss running tempo, they're one of the fastest teams in all of college football. So, sure. Yeah, you have to imagine that defensive line, if you come to the line of scrimmage and try and do tempo, it's not going to phase them that much, honestly.
There you go. Yeah. Yep.
Let's switch sides of the ball real quick. And this is the problem side of the ball for Georgia Southern. They gave up nearly 400 yards rushing at home against Boise State. Now, Genty is a Heisman level running back, apparently, but it's also having the fact that he just completely went off like 6 touchdowns in that game.
He did.
So a lot of him being that guy is that game. What can what can Georgia Southern do to slow down this Ole Miss offense, which is number 1 in like total yards, number 2 in scoring, number 1 in passing, just like a statistics who's who of what's going on? How can Georgia Southern match up?
Pray for rain. maybe slow them down. Maybe it's Clay Helton going, if we allow them to run it, they won't pass the football. And we got a better chance of tackling them for less than 10 yards compared to if Jaxson Dart is throwing it downfield and doing 50 yards at a clip. That game got away from Georgia Southern. Really disappointing from a Sun Belt point of view, because that was one of those ball games that, the Sun Belt, they win one of those games and they may be, one of those teams that are in the chase for that final playoff spot. It depends, what our guy Lane Kiffin wants to do. And, from what we've seen so far this year, Lane Kiffin likes to run up the score. So I don't think just because if they're running it at a good clip, that's going to take the ball out of Jaxson Dart's hand. They're gonna throw it. The only thing that I can think that Georgia Southern has a shot at is if they somehow start getting, a little pressure on Jaxson Dart and, force some turnovers, some tipped passes, something along those lines. I don't think they're going to, I think Georgia Southern is going to cover, but that very easily could be, 55-21.
Yeah, you have a situation like you were in Lafayette. Were you down there when Trey Harris was in Lafayette? Because I think he's the Blintnikoff winner in college football this year. He's got like nearly 30 catches. He's on pace for about 1,800 yards. I mean, he has basically been uncoverable through 3 weeks.
Yeah, that's an issue. Yeah, I think I missed him. I may have been in Mobile at the time covering Jalen Tolbert and Jalen Wayne for South Alabama. But that's an issue. But you do have I also missed, you have Amos on the backside, right?
Trey Amos is on there. Yeah.
So Trey Amos is on the backside, and he's a whole NIL deal, right? Where he got money to go to Alabama. He wasn't playing very much. Probably didn't get as much money as he was promised at Alabama. And now he ends up at Ole Miss. Hopefully things are working out very well. Could end up in the Senior Bowl this year. So we did see a little Trey Amos. That would have been a few years ago, although I was watching from afar. No, he's a local kid from Lafayette. Yeah. Or New Iberia, as it turns out.
Yeah, him and Trey Harris both are from that general area, and they're both really good. Trey Amos he's a legit cornerback. He's locked down the one side of the field cornerback. So I'm pretty impressed to see what he does when like Barry and Brown and Dane Key from Kentucky come to town and all those guys as the competition ramps up a little bit. He is a player that I am really looking for. Anyway, when we come back, we are going to give our final thoughts on the Ole Miss Rebels and the Georgia Southern Eagles. I'm joined by David Schultz from Locked On Sunbelt. Stick around for some predictions. Game Time is the place to get your Ole Miss tickets with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seats, and the lowest price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying Ole Miss tickets. Views from all seats in the venue, even if it's Vaught Hemingway Stadium. You can see that. There's not a bad seat in Vaught Hemingway, but this gives you the opportunity to see exactly what you can see from that seat before you buy the ticket. They have the lowest price guarantee, event cancellation, job loss protection. They take the guesswork out of buying Ole Miss tickets with Game Time. And with this being the most anticipated football season in Ole Miss history, I might be able to help you out with tickets as well. So download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE. That's all one word for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, we are back in Thunderdome. Locked On Sunbelt's own David Schultz is joining us, and we are going to give our final thoughts on this game. Now, David, this is a game to where I think if Ole Miss plays clean, like right now they're second in the country in scoring offense behind Tennessee, who is kicking onside kicks up 30-0, but that's another point altogether.
Didn't outscore South Alabama. I thought they were.
South
Alabama.
Yeah, how many? They ended up with 87 points. Is that what they finished?
87 points in a shortened fourth quarter with a running clock. Could have been more.
Yeah, South Alabama. Who do they have this weekend?
South Alabama's at App State on Thursday. That's a big ball game, actually.
Okay, yeah. I knew there was something that I wanted to pay attention to of them. And what's going on in the Sun Belt this week besides that?
Almost everyone's playing a P5 or a big ball game, right? JMU is playing North Carolina. The Cajuns are hosting Tulane. Marshall is at Ohio State. Georgia Southern has Ole Miss. I mean, it's a huge weekend for the Sun Belt. Yeah, we'll see if any of those teams. I mean, the last team that anybody thought, I know it's Vandy, but the last team that anybody thought that was going to beat the Power 4 squad was going to be Georgia State, and it's what I like to call a come from ahead victory because they were winning the whole game and had to have a last second victory, literally. But that was a big ball game for Georgia State. Del McGee now 2-1 early on in the season after losing badly in the second half to Georgia Tech. But it should be a fun weekend for the Sun Belt, that's for sure.
Who has the best chance of getting a scalp this weekend?
Well, I don't know if it's a scalp, but the Cajuns are playing Tulane at home. Tulane is coming off a couple of tough losses, right? That kind of got maybe screwed by the officiating against Kansas State, and then had a shot at knocking off Oklahoma in Norman. Maybe cashed out early on that one and got away with it because they did not cover, but they had a shot to win that football game and ended up not covering. They may be a little beat up. Cajuns had the week off. So that, again, Tulane is favored, maybe more on reputation than anything else. But the Cajuns, all of a sudden, boy, you beat Tulane, and then they're going to Wake next week. Those are two winnable ball games. I would think, Marshall's not beating Ohio State. I don't think Georgia State or Georgia Southern's beating Georgia Southern's not beating Ole Miss. I think JMU can stick with Carolina. We'll see if that comes down to the fourth quarter. But the big ball game is definitely the Cajuns hosting Tulane, mostly because they're at home and those teams are about even.
All right, if you look on FanDuel, Ole Miss is a 36.5-point favorite over Georgia Southern. The over-under is at 65.5.
Yeah.
Honestly, the previous games this season, I've always been kind of leaning towards the under because I don't think the other team could score enough to where Ole Miss is going to score enough to hit that over.
Sure.
But if you're being correct and Georgia Southern can score the ball, and if it turns out 17 points, Ole Miss can score 49 in this game.
Yeah.
So if Georgia Southern can get 17, I think the over might be the play in this game.
I agree with you. And you can look, if you want to look quickly, I believe Ohio State is like a 40-point favorite over Marshall. And yet the over-under is like 51.5. So they don't think Ohio State is going to give up many points to Marshall. Meanwhile, Ole Miss is favored by 36.5, and yet the over-under is 65.5. Again, Georgia Southern will end up scoring a little bit, especially if, the Ole Miss, is up big and goes to their, reserves in the fourth quarter. Clay Helton will try to make it as respectable as possible. The over is not a bad play. I still happen to think, and I'll be a little bit of a homer, Georgia Southern will end up covering this game points-wise because they can put some points up on the board.
What is your prediction for this game?
I'll revamp it. I'll go 49-20. I'll take what you said, 49 points, and I'll say 20. It may be a backdoor cover where it's 49-13 or something like that, and then, get a late touchdown when the reserves are in. But I'll go 49-20. Wouldn't be surprised if it's a little close for a little bit, and by a little bit, maybe a quarter and a half. Because, again, there hasn't been, with all due respect to the opponents that Ole Miss has played, has not been, a high level of competition yet. And Georgia Southern has played a couple of, has played Boise State, went on the road, beat Nevada, who is, again, better than anybody thought they would be. Last week was South Carolina State. An easy win for them, kind of a workman type win. I don't have any illusions that Georgia Southern is going to win this football game, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was close for a quarter and a half before they make Lane Kiffin makes any kind of adjustments in the second half. Although we do have, Clay Helton replace Lane Kiffin at USC.
Lane Kiffin's the guy that hired him and took him to USC.
Right. Okay, there you go.
And Clay Helton is the one who recruited Jaxson Dart.
I mean, so many storylines. I've
only
only been sitting here for 20 minutes, and it just hit me that these two guys have crossed paths before.
Yeah. Georgia Southern's a good team, and I think they have some of the best uniforms in all of college football. I think they have a better version of Alabama's uniform, and maybe it's that flat blue, but I love that uniform.
Yeah, no, it's pretty good. Pretty basic, pretty simple, but sometimes the simpler uniforms look more chic, if you ask me.
Yeah, you look at them and they're like Penn State, but better as far as a
Correct.
Of that uniform.
Yeah.
So
yep.
I'm a huge fan. Now, what are your final expectations of this game? You talked about Georgia Southern potentially covering. How do you think this is actually going to go?
Yeah, it may be close, a couple of touchdowns at halftime, and then Ole Miss takes control in the third quarter, and, it gets away from Georgia Southern at that point in time. Now, if Georgia Southern starts turning the ball over in the first half, it could be like,
that's 70-3.
Saints. It could be like that Saints Cowboys game that got out of control fast. So that's what this Georgia Southern can't turn the ball over. Or here's the other thing: if Ole Miss does score, they can't give it right back to Ole Miss, and that's what happened with App State and Clemson. Clemson went right down, scored. App State got one first down and had to punt, and then Clemson scored again. And it was 42-0 before you blinked. it was 42-0 with like 12 minutes to go in the second quarter. So Georgia Southern's going to have to be able to move the ball and put some points on the board, or I don't see why Ole Miss can't put those same thing they did to Wake last week, and same thing that Clemson did to App State. It's a tall order for Georgia Southern. Certainly you can find out, what some of your strengths are and some of your weaknesses are. And at the same time, that's tough to judge because you're not going up against anybody like Ole Miss in the Sun Belt. There's some good teams in the Sun Belt. There's not too many Ole Miss teams in the Sun Belt.
Yeah. And it's refreshing for a Locked On Ole Miss host to even be having that conversation. Like Ole Miss played Wake Forest, did not play well. They played incredibly sloppy, 140-6. That is not the territory that Ole Miss fans are used to being in.
Yeah, I covered. I cashed out. I made money.
Yeah.
I don't care about aesthetics. I care about my account.
That's right. That's right. It's all about the bank account. David Schultz from Locked On Sunbelt joining us. Thank you very much for stopping by. Any last thoughts? What do you have going on this weekend in the Locked On Sunbelt world?
Well, I think we're going to preview Tulane, but the preview the Cajuns in Tulane. We'll have South Alabama and App State early. I do want to pose this to the rivals, Steven, because this is something that we hit up last year, or maybe earlier this year, really early this year, and it was the domino effect of Nick Saban. And when Kalen DeBoer did not get his first choice as defensive coordinator, he went and gotten South Alabama's Kane Womack. And the question was, is it easier to get a head coaching job at a P4 school as a coordinator from a P4 school or as the head coach of a G5 school? And I think we found that out because regardless of what talent is there, Mississippi State does not look very good at all. I don't know if it's that talent or Jeff Lebby, but I do know that Kane Womack is from Mississippi. He is Mr. Mississippi, and I'm not sure that he was considered, after, unfortunately, Mike Leach passed away or when Jeff Lebby got the job. And so Jeff Lebby at no level has any head coaching experience. None. Last year or 2 years ago, Kane Womack was coming off a 10-win season, and I'm not sure he was considered for the job at Mississippi State. And so we'll see what happens with Mississippi State moving forward. But one of those things we'll be talking about is, can you get a head coaching job from a G5 school rather than being a coordinator from a Power 4 school without any head coaching experience? Like none.
Yeah. And everybody, we should be real about this. Jason Candle needs to get a phone call from Mississippi State from Toledo. That's a well-coached, good football team.
Yes.
That is the guy that could do very well at the Power 4 level. And he's not even getting a sniff right now. But hey, he's got Toledo rolling. He is absolutely got them rolling. We thought this was what's his name? He's at Iowa State now, the head coach.
Matt Campbell.
We thought it was all him, and Jason Candle came in and took over and just completely continued what he was doing. Maybe this is a Dan Hawkins and Chris Peterson type situation to where it kind of seamlessly moves over, and Jason Candle was Jason Candle was kind of the brains of that operation.
We do have a couple of other examples. My guy, Fran Brown up at Syracuse, he wasn't even a coordinator. He was a defensive backs coach. And then you have Del McGee, who I believe was a running backs coach at Georgia. He's over at Georgia State now. So you do have some examples of guys that were not coordinators getting head coaching jobs. One at a P4 at Syracuse and Georgia State taking Del McGee. But I think Del had head coaching experience at like the high school level. So at least that's more than Jeff Lebby had at any level. So it's one of the things we'll be talking about moving forward. We'll see when we get to that. because to me, it's a fascinating story, because I'm sure we already have places that are looking for, people want, Florida, for example. Billy Napier hasn't worked out, went from the Cajuns, really successful, had a great season when he left, and it just has not worked out, which to me, Steven, I don't know what your thoughts on this, but if you swing and miss on the quarterback, you're going to struggle. And it doesn't matter what level you're at. The Cajuns have not had a healthy quarterback since Mike Desimo has been there, so that's an issue. We see what happens with Mike Norvell at Florida State. They swung and missed on DJU. And so if you swing and miss on the quarterback, that could bring the whole program down. And it's unfortunate, because I'm a big Billy Napier fan.
A lot of Lane Kiffin's success, and the reason he got off to such a good start at Ole Miss, is because he walked into Matt Corral. He walked in the door, and Matt Corral was right there. And once that happened, everything became easier. Anyway, David Schultz from Locked On Sunbelt, thank you for stopping by, bud. We'll talk to you later.
Really appreciate it, Steven. Thanks for having me on.
Well, that was Thunderdome. That was David Schultz from Locked On Sunbelt. Thank you for making Locked On Ole Miss your go-to source for Ole Miss sports. We pride ourselves on offering the most comprehensive perspectives, which is why we're the #1 Ole Miss podcast. Your support just means the world to us. Thank you for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen. Now go check out Locked On College Football as a second listen. From NIL deals to never-ending conference realignment rumors, Spencer McLaughlin gets you ready for an exciting season on the gridiron. You'll find the link to Locked On College Football in the description down below, so you don't even need to search. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And exciting news, you can now become a Locked On Ole Miss Insider. It's the best and easiest way to stay updated on all things Ole Miss sports. It's a texting program that sends you notifications on anything relevant without all of the hassle of message boards filled with trolls. Enjoy a 14-day free trial and experience the future of college sports coverage. We're adding new perks as we grow, so do not miss out. The link is down below in the description. For those of you watching on YouTube, though, we'll send you to Locked On College Sports right now. Howdy toddy, everyone.